Think you know gun laws? You might be one bad assumption away from a felony. Yeah, I'm serious. Every single year, thousands of responsible gun owners, good law-abiding people, end up arrested or fined because they believed something that sounded right but wasn't. And here's the scary part. Most of them had no idea they were doing anything wrong. Today, we're busting 7 of the most common gun law myths that can land you in handcuffs even if you thought you were following the rules. Whether you carry every day, keep a gun in your truck, or just want to make sure you're staying legal, this video could literally save you from an arrest. So stay tuned, because by the end, you'll know exactly which rules you've heard are total nonsense and what the actual law says instead. And hey, if you care about protecting your rights while staying out of trouble, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We break down real gun law situations and no politics, no drama, just facts that keep you safe. Alright, let's start with a little context on why this stuff matters more than ever. Alright, before we dive into the myths, let's talk about why this is so important, because a lot of good gun owners end up in bad situations for one simple reason. They just don't know. Gun laws in the US are one of the most confusing, inconsistent, and fast-changing areas of the law. What's perfectly legal in one state might be a felony the moment you cross a border. Let me give you a quick example. A few years ago, a guy from Pennsylvania licensed to carry, no criminal record, drove into New Jersey with his concealed handgun still in his car. He wasn't waving it around, he wasn't threatening anyone, just had it locked in the glove box. Next thing you know, he's facing felony possession charges, all because New Jersey doesn't recognize Pennsylvania's concealed carry permit. That's the kind of trap we're talking about. See, most people assume gun laws are federal or that there's one universal rulebook, but that's not how it works. Federal law sets some broad guidelines, but the real power belongs to individual states and even local governments. So the rules can change from one county to the next. And here's the kicker: I didn't know doesn't matter. The courts don't care if you were confused or if your buddy at the range told you something different. When it comes to firearms, ignorance is not a defense. That's why this video matters. Because if you own a firearm, whether for protection, sport, or collecting, you owe it to yourself to know what's true and what's a myth. It's not about fear. It's about being informed, being smart, and staying free. So, with that said, let's get into the real meat of today's video. Here are the top 7 gun law myths that can get you arrested, starting with the one that catches more travelers than any other. Myth number 1. If I have a permit in my state, I can carry anywhere. Alright, let's kick things off with probably the most common and the most dangerous misconception out there. Sounds logical, right? You passed the background check, you've got the training, the state gave you a permit, so why wouldn't it count everywhere else? Here's the truth. Gun laws don't work like driver's licenses. When you get your driver's license in one state, every other state in the country recognizes it. But when it comes to concealed carry, every state gets to decide who they recognize and who they don't. That's called reciprocity. Some states have wide reciprocity like Texas or Florida, and they honor dozens of out-of-state permits. Others, almost none. If you cross into a state like New York, New Jersey, California, or Maryland with your concealed firearm, even if it's perfectly legal where you came from, you could be committing a serious crime the moment your tires hit their pavement. And I'm not talking about a slap on the wrist. We're talking felony possession, confiscation of your firearm, your vehicle, and in some cases, mandatory jail time. Let me give you a real-world example. A traveler from Texas was driving through New York with his legally owned handgun in his glove compartment. When he got pulled over for speeding, the officer asked if there were any firearms in the vehicle, and the man, being honest, said yes. He thought his Texas permit covered him. It didn't. He was arrested on the spot. That's how easy it is to go from law-abiding citizen to felony defendant. So here's what smart gun owners do. Before you travel, check your reciprocity maps. Don't rely on something you heard 2 years ago. Laws change all the time. There are websites and even free apps that show which states recognize your specific permit. Check them every single time before a road trip or vacation. And if you're not sure, assume it's not legal. Store your firearm unloaded, locked, and separate from ammunition until you know for sure. Because remember, the burden's on you to know the law, not the cop who pulls you over. Alright, that's myth number 1. Now let's move on to another big misconception that trips up travelers all the time. The idea that as long as your gun is unloaded, you can transport it however you want. Myth number 2. As long as the gun is unloaded, I can transport it however I want. Okay, myth number 2, and this one gets people all the time, especially when they're traveling across state lines. A lot of folks believe that as long as their firearm is unloaded, they can toss it in the trunk, the glove box, or under the seat and be good to go. Makes sense, right? It's not loaded, so it's safe. But legally, that's not how it works. Here's where people get confused. There is a federal law that protects gun owners who are transporting firearms across state lines. It's called the Firearm Owners Protection Act, or FOPA for short. And FOPA does give you some protection, but it's not a free pass. To qualify, you have to meet 3 specific conditions. The gun must be unloaded. It must be locked away in a container or case and not easily accessible from the passenger compartment. Your travel must be continuous, meaning you're going through a restrictive state, not staying in one. Sounds simple, but here's the trap. If you stop for the night at a hotel or take a long detour, you're no longer traveling through. That protection disappears and you're suddenly subject to that state's laws. Let me give you a real-life example. There was a guy traveling from Virginia to Maine with his firearms locked and unloaded in the trunk, totally legal under FOPA. But he decided to stop overnight in New Jersey. The next morning, he got pulled over for a traffic violation. Once police found the guns, he was arrested and charged with unlawful possession. He thought he was protected under federal law, but because he stopped overnight, that continuous travel requirement was broken. So what does this mean for you? If you're crossing multiple states, keep your firearm unloaded, locked in a case, separate from ammo. And don't stop in restrictive states unless absolutely necessary. And remember, even if you're following FOPA perfectly, that doesn't mean every police officer on the side of the road will understand it the same way. You might still be detained or charged, and you'll have to fight it later in court. So if you can, avoid traveling with firearms through anti-gun states altogether. It's just not worth the risk. All right, that brings us to myth number 3, and this one's about what happens when you're carrying in your car. A lot of gun owners think, hey, it's my property. I can keep my gun however I want. Well, not exactly. Movie Camera Part 5, myth number 3. It's legal to carry in my car because it's my property. All right, let's talk about your car because this one causes a ton of confusion. A lot of folks believe, it's my car, it's my property, so I can have my gun however I want inside it. Seems logical, right? You own it. You control it just like your house. But unfortunately, the law doesn't always see it that way. Here's the truth. Your vehicle isn't legally treated like your home. In most states, the moment you step inside your car with a firearm, you're now under that state's vehicle carry laws. And those laws vary wildly. Let's break it down. In some states like Texas, Arizona, or Tennessee, you can carry a handgun in your car without a permit, as long as it's concealed or otherwise lawfully possessed. That's called constitutional carry. But cross into Illinois or Maryland, and the rules completely change. There, even having a loaded gun in your vehicle without a specific concealed carry permit can get you charged with a serious offense. And don't assume unloaded automatically means legal either. Some states require it to be both unloaded and stored in a separate, locked compartment ammo in another container entirely. So imagine this scenario. You're driving from Kentucky, where you can carry in your car freely, into Illinois, where you can't. You get pulled over for speeding. The officer asks if there's a firearm in the car, and you answer honestly. If you don't have the right permit, even though it was totally fine just a few miles ago, you're suddenly facing illegal possession charges. That's how fast it happens. Here's the simple takeaway. If you're driving with a firearm, always check the laws for every state you'll pass through. And if you're in doubt, default to the safest option. Unload it, lock it in a case, keep it separate from ammunition. Also, keep this in mind. Some states have weird rules about where you can park with a gun in your car, especially in school zones or certain government properties. You could get charged just for being on the wrong piece of land. So yeah, your car might be your property, but it's not your castle, at least not in the eyes of the law. Now, speaking of property, let's move into myth number 4, which is about something a lot of people think keeps them safe legally, but doesn't. That's the belief that if your gun is registered, you're automatically in the clear. Myth number 4, my gun is registered, so I'm automatically legal. All right, let's tackle myth number 4, one that comes up constantly, especially with new gun owners. You've probably heard someone say this. My gun's registered, so I'm good. Sounds reassuring, right? But here's the truth. There is no federal gun registration system for regular firearms in the United States. That's right. When you buy a gun from a federally licensed dealer, your background check goes through the NICS system, but that's not a registration. The dealer keeps the paperwork, and the federal government doesn't maintain a database of all civilian-owned guns. Now, here's where things get messy. Some states like California, New York, or Hawaii do have registration or record-keeping requirements. In those places, the state government keeps a record of who owns what firearm. But most states, no registration at all. So what happens when you move from one to the other? Let's say you live in California, where your handgun is registered with the state. You move to Texas. That California registration doesn't carry over. Texas doesn't require registration, and it doesn't recognize California's system. Flip that around, if you move into California with unregistered firearms, you have a limited time window to register them with the state, or you're technically breaking the law. Here's the kicker: being registered doesn't automatically make you compliant. You could still violate laws about transportation, storage, capacity limits, or magazine restrictions, depending on where you are. So don't fall into the trap of thinking that a registration record is a magic shield against prosecution. It's just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. And for folks in states without registration, remember, that doesn't mean no rules. You still have to comply with federal laws on background checks, transfers, and possession. Myth number 5, I can lend my gun to a friend as long as they're legal. Alright, myth number 5, and this one catches a lot of good people with good intentions. It usually starts with something simple like, hey man, can I borrow your rifle for deer season? Or, my buddy's going to the range this weekend. Can I lend him my Glock? Seems harmless, right? You know your friend, you trust them, they're not a felon or anything. What could go wrong? Well, legally, a lot. Here's the truth. Under federal law, it's a crime to transfer a firearm to anyone you know or have reason to believe is prohibited from owning one. Now, that part makes sense. We all get that. But the law doesn't stop there. Even if your friend is totally legal, some states require a background check for any firearm transfer, even temporary ones. So, that quick weekend loan, that's technically a transfer. For example, in California, Colorado, and a few other states, even loaning a firearm for a short time without going through a licensed dealer for the background check can be a misdemeanor or even a felony. And yes, that includes just borrowing it to go to the range or for hunting. Let me give you a real-world scenario. Two buddies in Colorado swapped handguns for a week just to test them out at the range. Totally normal in most states. A range officer overheard them mention the trade, reported it, and law enforcement got involved. Both were charged because no background check was done for the temporary transfer. Now, of course, some states have exceptions, for example, family members, supervised range use, or lawful hunting situations. But those exceptions vary a lot. So here's what you should do. If you want to lend or borrow a firearm, check your state's transfer laws first. In some states, you can do it no problem. In others, you might need to go through a dealer or file paperwork, even for something casual or short-term. And even if it's technically legal, remember you're still responsible for what happens with your firearm. If your buddy mishandles it, uses it unsafely, or commits a crime with it, guess whose name that gun is still tied to? So yeah, helping a friend out is great, but when it comes to guns, helping can turn into handcuffed real fast if you're not careful. Myth number 6. If I'm on my own property, I can do whatever I want with my gun. Alright, let's talk about myth number 6. And this one's a big one because it sounds so reasonable. It's my property, my land. I can do whatever I want with my gun. It feels right. You worked hard for your home or your land. You're on private property, and it's your Second Amendment right to bear arms, right? Well, yes, but not without limits. Here's the truth. Being on your own property doesn't give you a free pass to ignore local or state laws. You might be surprised how many restrictions can still apply, even if you're standing in your own backyard. For example, many cities and counties have ordinances that ban the discharge of firearms within certain distances of homes, schools, or roads. That means if you decide to set up a little target range in your backyard and start shooting, you could be breaking the law even though it's your land. Let me give you a real example. A man in Florida on several acres of rural property started target shooting on his own land. He was completely within his county's rural zoning. But just a few years earlier, that county passed a new ordinance banning recreational shooting within 300 feet of another dwelling. Guess what happened? A neighbor called it in, deputies showed up, and he was cited. He thought he was perfectly legal because, again, it's my property. But local rules changed that. Now, it's not just about firing your gun. In some places, even openly carrying or displaying a firearm on your property can get you in trouble if it's visible to the public and causes alarm that can fall under brandishing or disturbing the peace laws. And if your property happens to be near a school zone, you might be in violation of federal law just by possessing a firearm too close to that boundary, even if you're technically on private land. So what's the lesson here? Always check your local ordinances, not just state law. Your state might say you can own or carry, but your city or county might have extra restrictions about where and how you can use it. And remember, the Second Amendment gives you the right to keep and bear arms, but it doesn't automatically override local safety regulations. So before you set up that backyard range or start carrying around your property, take a few minutes to check your local laws. It's a lot cheaper than paying a fine or fighting a charge. Now, let's move to the last one, myth number 7. And it's probably the most dangerous belief of them all. It's the idea that if you didn't mean to break the law, or you just didn't know, you'll be fine. Spoiler, that excuse never works. Myth number 7. Ignorance of the law is an excuse. Alright, this last one, myth number 7, might be the most important one in the entire video. If I didn't know I was breaking the law, they'll understand. Nope, that's not how it works. When it comes to firearms, ignorance of the law is never an excuse. You can have zero criminal history, be completely honest with police, and genuinely think you were following the rules, but if you violated a gun law, prosecutors don't care whether it was a mistake or not. And I get it, that sounds harsh, but that's how the legal system is built. The government assumes that you, as the gun owner, took the time to learn the laws before you carried or transported a firearm. Let me give you a real-world example. One that happens way more than people realize. Every year, hundreds of travelers get arrested at airports for accidentally bringing a firearm in their carry-on bag. They forgot it was in there, or thought it was fine since it was unloaded. Doesn't matter. TSA finds it, local police are called, and you guessed it, they're arrested on the spot. And we're not talking about hardened criminals here. These are business travelers, parents, veterans, everyday people who just made a mistake. Or take someone crossing into a restrictive state, thinking their home state permit covers them. When they're caught with a firearm, I didn't know won't save them. Ignorance doesn't erase criminal liability. Now, the good news is there's a way to avoid ever being in that position. Here's what responsible gun owners do. They study their own state's laws and any states they travel through. They double-check reciprocity before every trip. They keep up with yearly law updates, because rules change constantly. And they verify information through official sources, not Facebook posts or a buddy at the range. Because here's the truth. The Second Amendment protects your right to own a firearm. But the government has built thousands of laws around how you can exercise that right. If you don't know them, you're walking through a legal minefield blindfolded. So don't let ignorance be the thing that costs you your freedom, your firearm, or your future. Now, to wrap this up, let's go over what we've learned and how you can stay safe, informed, and on the right side of the law. Alright, let's recap what we just covered, because these 7 myths trip up thousands of gun owners every single year. Myth number 1, thinking your carry permit works everywhere. Myth number 2, believing unloaded means unrestricted travel. Myth number 3, assuming your car is your castle. Myth number 4, thinking registration equals legality. Myth number 5, lending guns to friends without knowing the rules. Myth number 6, believing your property means full freedom. Myth number 7, trusting I didn't know will save you. All of them sound harmless. All of them have put good people in handcuffs. And here's the real takeaway. Owning a firearm isn't just about rights. It's about responsibility. You have to know the laws, respect the boundaries, and stay informed because no one else is going to do it for you. Don't rely on what you read in a forum or what your buddy told you at the gun range. Laws change constantly, and one wrong assumption can cost you your gun, your money, or your freedom. So if you learned something new today, if one of these myths surprised you, do me a favor, hit that like button. It helps this video reach more responsible gun owners who need to hear this stuff. And make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, because every week, we break down real-world gun law topics so you can protect your rights and stay out of trouble. Drop a comment below and tell me which myth have you heard the most, or maybe one that confused you before you learned the truth. I read every comment, and your question might even show up in a future video. Until next time, stay smart, stay safe, and as always, stay within the law.